Welcome to Stories with Brisco and Bradshaw. I would be Bradshaw. That will be the WWE Hall of Famer, Oklahoma's favorite son, Mr. Gerald Brisco. And we got the 6-time WWE Women's Champion. When you combine the Women's and the Divas Championship, and according to the internet, she's won the TNA Championship 1,400 times. She's also a country music star. And the biggest thing I'm a mark for, Jim Thorpe Award winner. She's our friend, Mickie James. Mickie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. That was so nice. I appreciate that. I'm excited to be here, guys. How's it going?
Mickie, what a pleasure it is to have you and to have somebody that I can really communicate with, because, communicating with and he's a white man, he's got the white man blood. So you got a little native blood in you, so we can communicate a heck of a lot better. Just kind of ignore what he says. He's a big fan of Christopher Columbus, by the way. So ignore all his comments about Chris. But welcome to the Stories with Brisco and Bradshaw.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. Brisco, I haven't seen you in a long time.
I know it has been too long. So So let's get reacquainted here. And boy, one of the great things about doing these podcasts, you get to do a lot of research on people that you already know. And, you go with the attitude, well, I know everything about Mickie or whoever we have on. What do I need to do? Then you get in, you start digging up some things. Man, what a great career. What a great career you had. And your start to the business was very unique. Where you were a fan, and all of a sudden, I want to do this. You're up in Virginia, if I'm correct on that, and looking for a place to go. And you ended up with some of the best trainers in the business, including one of my old rivals, Dory Funk Jr.
Oh, thank you. I love Dory so much. I did 2 of his camps. I did the first one, and then I went back down to Florida and did another camp with him. And he was so kind. It was interesting because he still will get in the ring and work with these kids. It's pretty fascinating at his age and stuff. But with me, I was just I started at a small school, and the school that I started at, I even transferred school to go to a school in Baltimore because there wasn't a whole lot of wrestling schools. And I was a wrestling fan, so I didn't even realize that that's how people got into wrestling. I thought that they found these people like circus freaks, right? Because they were so much larger than life to me. From that fan seat, it was just like, whoa, how do they just find these people? So that was an interesting journey, and obviously just kind of transferred schools. I would do a lot of camps. I did a Ricky Morton, Bobby Eaton camp. I did a Ricky Steamboat camp. Anytime that there was a way to try to learn and get better, because I obviously realized I wasn't where I wanted to be because I was still on the independents, So, yeah. Crazy.
So how do you end up with Dory down there? And I got to tell you this because she gets maligned a lot. But Marty Funk, when you were down there, Marty, every chance she would get, every time hey, we got this, and she always called you a young Indian princess. And we got this young Indian princess in our school. I think you'd really like her. She's an old school worker, and she's really, really talented. So Marty did everything in her power to push you forward there. So
she did. And they and we did those camps on the reservations. We did some of those shows on the reservations, and that's where I met Steve Isles, who's now doing the WWE game stuff, and he was tagging. I will say she was a huge advocate for me. And I first did the camp when they came up to Virginia to the school. And so they came for like a week. And we did a camp there. And then about 3 months later or so, they invited me to come down to their facility in Florida. And so I went down there for about 2 weeks and trained. So I think that was right after when Amy and Edge and Christian had gone through there.
Right.
Right. It was maybe 6 months, a year after that. Right. So they had a lot of talent go through there, because I think at the time prior to me doing the camps, WWE was sending a lot of talent through their camps as well.
They were, and those names that you mentioned, they really helped spark that camp to notoriety because of the talent level there. But Marty's very unique. That school, it was all in one type school. You learned everything at that school. That's what I really appreciate about Dory, because he had everything there. If you wanted to be an announcer, kind of a miniature NXT, and he had all the equipment there. he invested a lot of money and a lot of time, and they produce, well, they produce you, and so they produce a lot of stars coming out of that little camp
for sure.
Ocala. Yeah.
They did.
Mickie, what year was this? I mean, when you were in high school, did you want to be a wrestler? Is that all you wanted to be?
No. I watched wrestling as a child, and it was like our bonding thing with my dad, right? So my grandfather, my father's father, and we'd watch a little bit of wrestling at my mom. My parents split when I was 2. So when I would go see my dad, this was our bonding kind of thing with my sisters. And, that's where I fell in love with wrestling. And it was very like Saturday morning wrestling. So, it was when I would see him, and then I was training horses. I was competing heavily, especially, through middle and high school, with horses. And that's what I thought I was going to do. That's what I was going to train and compete with horses. And then it was like after high school, and I found myself, I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. What do you do? Right. So, and I'm working in a bar, and I'm still riding horses, but more, they're expensive. It's an expensive thing. And then when you start to get on your own, you realize that my mom was paying for all these shows and stuff. Yeah. And I was wonderful at it, but it was going to be, so, and I was like, I just don't know what to do. And wrestling was really hot at the time. And Bradshaw, you were on TV at that point. You guys were hella hot. And it was like that whole resurgence of like this escapism and the reminder of like why I loved wrestling so much in the first place, of like these than life characters and stuff. And I would get lost. Like I resorted back to like this wild fandom. And a buddy of mine who was also working, he was a bouncer at the bar, Chris, he's the one who said, hey, my friend has a school and it's outside DC. So it's about 2 hours from here, but you love it so much. I think you should go try it out. Your personality is great. I think you'd be really cool at it. And I'm like, there's a wrestling school. What's this wrestling school? So that's really what sparked it. And then that was November 98. I walked into the back of it's called Kaida Pro, but it was in the back of a boxing jiu-jitsu facility, and it was a boxing ring. And there were some guys in there wrestling, Shorty Smalls. Jimmy Z was the owner of this school or whatever. And I trained there for about a year before I transferred to Maryland Championship Wrestling. And that's where I feel like I'm so grateful for that first school and stuff. But as you said, it was a boxing ring, and then we trained in that for a while until we finally got a wrestling ring in there and stuff. But a boxing ring is stiff, and I didn't realize the difference until I found out what a real wrestling ring felt like, which still hurts, but it's not the same, right? So yeah, but then I transferred there, and Danny McDivitt, and that's really where I felt like I started getting more opportunities, because it was moving a little bit more northeast. It was a further of a drive for me, but it opened the door to Ring of Honor and to all these, different, and they would bring in more camps. That's where I did the Ricky Steamboat camp and things like that. They brought in Sherry Mattel. So I got to sit there and like really try to pick brains, of different people. It was cool. And it opened up doors for me. And that's how I got the
What was it? Was the school? Was it? How often was it? Was it a weekend school? Was it a daily school?
I did Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yeah,
is what I would do. I think it was a 2-a-day schedule, and there were probably open more, but for me to commute, I was in Richmond, so the DC drive was to Manassas could be an hour and a half, or it could be 4 hours, depending on the, even if you try to take the back roads. But and then Baltimore was Bone Breakers was in Baltimore, so it was an extra hour, but you could scoot up the other way, over the bridge.
Right.
And that's what I really admired out of all the independent people that really came out of those small schools. If you really wanted it, I mean, it was a job. I mean, you had 2 days a week, and you usually had another job to support your habit of wanting to be a professional wrestler. So you spent all your time traveling back and forth. And we all know just doing it 2 days a week is really not enough. You got to be a really astute student to be able to grasp all that stuff and to progress like you did. you must have taken the business just really like, this is what I'm going to be, and I'm going to make it to be a 2-day camp like that, and then spread out like you did it. It's remarkable, and I give a lot of these independent boys and girls a lot of credit for having that desire, because that can break your desire real quick. You know, you never have a smooth moment. You're either something's wrong with your car, or you're delayed from work, or traffic is horrible, or something like that, and you show up late. It takes a heck of a lot of dedication. And then to go from where you did and even make that next step up, Mickie, you had to be a dedicated athlete to make those steps there.
Well, I think we all had to be at some point to get to that level, you know, and I think that's really becomes the difference maker, because I was really, you know, you really are stuck in this point of, do I follow this one thing that is secure and it's safe and it's like, I know I'll make money and I'll be just fine and I'll probably have whatever, or do I follow the dream that's going to be the struggle, that's going to be the sleeping in your car, that's going to be the road grinding and not having a career per se while you chase this dream, because they want you there 9 to 5 and you want off on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, and maybe Thursday and maybe Monday, depending on how far I have to drive for $25 on a tree in Michigan. You know, like it was just, and the pay was, and I've hopefully, I feel like the business has kind of done a little bit better, but to make a living wrestling the indies prior to actually getting a contract is nearly impossible. So you have to have that side hustle. And we didn't have things like, you know, paid platforms and Patreon and all that stuff. So it was like literally waitressing, and then ask, you know, that was enough to kind of give you the schedule that you wanted. And I got really, there were some testing times for sure. There was a lot of doubtful times and stuff. And I remember moving out of I was so excited to move into my apartment at 18 and be on my own. And that this like moment of, okay, I got to move back to my grandma's farm because I can't afford my rent. And I really want to make it in wrestling. And if I want to make it in wrestling, I got to do this, but it means I can't afford to be on my own. I can't afford it. And, that was like a real reset where I go like, okay, so that means I have to give even more to make it, you know, because if I'm going to have to set back 2 steps. So
yeah. At what point did you discover, hey, this is really it? I'm gonna move back in to save some money so I can have my schedule free. At what point, Mickie, were you promised anything? Were you promised an elevation of bookings, or you just felt it in your bones that it was time to do that?
It was my ECW tryout. I think it was about 2000, and I went to, they were in Norfolk, the Norfolk Scope. And I remember going in there and I was still very green. You know, when I say, you know, you start in 98, I had my first pro match. It wasn't even pro, like practice match at the VFW Hall in Stanton, Virginia, you know, March 3rd, 99. So I really, on the indies, you're doing 1 match a month, maybe, if you're lucky, right? Besides practice. So it's still very, very green. And I just remember going in and feeling so out of place, but also eager. But at the same time, I could feel like how green I was and how I could just see, you know, and I was like, I'm not ready for this, but I want this. So what do I need to do to be ready for this? And that was like, I have to learn everything. I really have to learn everything that I can. And I took like 200, it wasn't 200 DDTs from Mikey Whipwright, but it felt like 200. I remember I did take like 20 DDTs in a row, just up and fed. And the idea was to be Beulah McGillicuddy's little sister, who was not quite 18 yet. If you ever have Tommy on, you got to ask him this story. But that was the idea for me to come in. But then I go like, God, wonder how different my career would have been had I come, and that was my beginning, rather than what most people remember as the beginning of Alexis Lurie was either Raven in The Gathering for Alexis Lurie, or the debut of Mickie James, if they didn't see any of that TNA stuff back then. So it was unique, you know, it's just really crazy. And I was really devastated that, they weren't interesting, but they were also going out of business at the time, and I wasn't ready. So I'm grateful that it didn't happen, you know, now. Yeah.
So it's kind of switch gears there. You're very talented. You got a great singing voice, and you made a career out of country music too. Did you, when you had those skills in school, was that ever an option to you? Did you ever think, oh, I'll go that direction there?
No, I played violin for about 5 years, middle and high school. And I was good. I wouldn't say I was great. I was good. I was like, second string, whatever. But I also wasn't completely dedicated. I love singing and I always wanted to sing, but I just didn't think I was bad at it. Like I would sing in the church choir, and my grandfather on my mom's side, like they had a whole Native American gospel group that they sung at the churches, and they did all kinds of events and festivals and stuff. But I just didn't think I was a good singer. So, but I loved to write, and I would write a lot, and I would just write melodies or poems or just random crazy thoughts, because that's what crazy people do. And yeah, but it wasn't something I pursued. I remember recording myself, and this is I always say this is the reason why I don't think I actively pursued it. Was I was singing in my room one day, and my stepdad at the time was probably watching football or something in the living room, and I was singing Whitney Houston's "I Will Always Love You" to the top of my lungs, like in my, remember the microphones that would plug into and there was an A side and a B side, and you could play the cassette, because I had a cassette because I loved her. And then you could record yourself on a blank tape that I would record myself over and over again. So the tape is probably falling apart, but was recording myself singing her song with her, like a duet, if you will. And at some point, probably about after an hour of recording myself, he comes in and he's like, "For God's sakes, please stop singing. You're killing me. I'm trying to watch the game." It's all one level rancher house. My sister's and I's bedroom is in the back, and so it's really not that far from the living room. Yeah. And then after that day, I was like, oh God, I'm not a very good singer.
What's amazing is, you talk about Tommy Dreamer. They always say like everybody's 6 shades away from Kevin Bacon, knowing Kevin Bacon. Everybody has an association with Tommy Dreamer. Oh, everybody who's come to the residence go, yeah, I was with Tommy Dreamer. Tommy must be 100 years old, and there must be 4 of him, because everybody I've ever seen has a story about Tommy Dreamer when they get started, or sometime in their life.
He's like a chameleon. He's always there. You just don't always see him. No, he was also the head. He was running kind of OBW at the time when I was there. He'd kind of taken over some of the position there, and so. Yeah, Tommy's always had this weird, and now he's with Impact and one of the head agents. So I see him on a weekly basis now. I love Dreamer, but he's the best. Like obviously the best. And I attribute a lot of even when I was in OVW, of my sticking around, because there was a moment there where I was kind of like, why am I doing this? It was like the Divas era was kicking off, and I was like, I feel like I'm not even what they're looking for, and I've been working so hard, and I feel like I don't understand what I'm doing wrong. And he helped me out through a lot of that too. So, and I'm grateful for that, so he's always been in there in my career, and like these real kind of cool parts of it,
Dick Murdoch had a tape that he recorded similar to what you did he says with Dusty, "Take Me Drunk, I'm Home" was the hit song. And it was really bad. It was not good. So I can see why you made it in music and why Dick didn't.
Oh. I'm gonna go back and listen to this.
But as Mr. Brisco will attest, Dick was a wonderful Texan that did not like Oklahoma.
Oh, he was a good man.
He was a good man.
Mickey, he throws these little shots at me all the time on these shows, and I'm polite to our guests, so I can't nail him back. Right. I'm the polite one of the two. Everybody knows that too.
He's just mad that you guys sit a little bit above him. That's all.
Yeah,
like a top hat.
Yeah, I got to show you some of my texts from Mr. Brisco. I'll show you how polite he is. That I get every day. So, Mickie, when was it that after that period that you started, then you went from there to, was that Impact that came along first?
I started doing Ring of Honor, and out of Ring of Honor, I'd had some tryouts with Impact. I did the first TNA, that set of pay-per-views where they were doing like a 25 diva battle royal. And then I did that. And then I started working with Ring of Honor, because as I moved up to Maryland, I was doing a bunch of different, more independents, so I was running into more people, and that's kind of just how it goes, you hopefully. And out of Ring of Honor, I was working Ring of Honor. That's when Raven came in and he was working a program with CM Punk. And I met him and he was like, hey, I want to do Impact, doing this thing over there. And I'm trying to I want to do like the Gathering, like the Flock was, but I'm just trying to find the right people for that. And he asked if I was interested. And I'm like, holy crap, this is amazing, right? Not only does it like get me on Impact or on television and open up more doors for me, but I can kind of sit under the learning tree of Raven and maybe understand the business a little bit better, because I'm still trying to figure out what the hell I'm doing out here. And yeah, so that was really cool, because I think that really, I went there and started with that, and that opened up the door with my friend Julio De Niro, and then Punk came in as part of the Gathering as well. But I got to work the Clockwork Orange House of Fun match with Jared, and Jeff was so kind, and Jerry too, to let me come in, and especially as a female, and do all these cool things that women weren't really doing, like hardcore matches and stuff on television like that, especially against men, so it was cool. It was cool. And that kind of opened up the doors. And at the time they weren't really doing like yearly contracts and stuff. So I could still do my WWE tryouts in between whatever, a monthly contract or a weekly, I could still do it all. And I think just as I kept learning and I was emailing and calling poor Dr. Tom. I would say every other week, at least once a month, he would hear from me of like, Dr. Tom, did you get my tape? What'd you think of it? What could I have done better? When are you guys going to be kind of close? And even if it wasn't close, like I remember driving home 18 hours from Florida at one point, just because I needed to get in front, I just wanted it. And so, yeah. I was desperate at that point. I'm like, I'm broke and I'm desperate and I need this job.
Did you see the women's wrestling change during that time? Because, during 98, when you talk about starting, that was the peak of the Attitude Era. Everything was on fire. But the women weren't wrestlers. Mean, Tori and Stacy could have been great wrestlers, but they weren't trained. And their job wasn't to wrestle. So it's not their fault. They're both good athletes. They could have been good wrestlers, but there wasn't really women's wrestling.
Well, and I don't think that they needed to be good wrestlers, because there was that spot for them, because those people were so over and fire. And even when Trish first came in as a manager, and then you seen her cross over, and Lita, she first came in as a manager, and you seen her cross over into wrestling. I love that, like Jacqueline and Molly Holly and people like there. I always look back to my favorite, Sensational Sherry, and I'm like, she was a badass. Like she wasn't always presented as a wrestler. She was sometimes presented as, a manager for the most part. But I always believed when she would get in the ring that she could still kick ass, and she could kick some of the guys' asses too. I don't know. I still come from that mentality of like, there's a place for everyone. And I don't feel like every female on the roster should be a 5-star wrestler, because I feel like it takes away from some of the sympathy for me. And when we're trying to tell different stories of like the girlfriend character, or just the valet, that's not, that's a little bit more feeble maybe, or just not a fighter as much, but I think since the time I've been in it, it's evolved so much from, like you said, a lot of people who were getting into it before that. Not all of them were wrestlers, nor did they want to be wrestlers, to whereas I feel like most of the females that are in the industry today are training specifically because they want to be wrestlers, like they want to be a wrestler. And so the bar's been raised because that's what they're training for. And because of the opportunities also, like that matches the opportunities that they've been giving. And so, it's just kind of raised the bar of what's acceptable for them and what they can do.
Yeah, and it's been a seismic shift, from where they were in 98 to where they are today, and Lita and Trish, I've always thought that, if they weren't so good, it would have set it back 10 years. I think it still would have happened. But, when they first main evented Raw, they were so good that it worked. That you had the right two people, and then you came along. You guys were real pioneers for what the women's division is now. And if you guys weren't so good, then it would have taken, it still would have happened, but it would have happened years later.
Yeah. Well, and I think it was, thank you for saying that, but I do think like they were so different, but the wrestling, wrestling was so hot at that point, um, I felt like when they were really getting this push and it was like really putting a lot of eyes, like when you say when they first main evented Raw, or like those freaking crazy hardcore matches that Lisa Marie Victoria would do with them. And then I just like, there was like real key moments for me, even in the business going like, oh shit, this is pretty groundbreaking because it means that more things are going to come and more things are going to come. And it was just exciting to see. But, um, yeah, it's crazy to see now that women are main eventing WrestleMania and people, it's not even like a second thought, of like, oh, this shouldn't happen or this shouldn't be. It's just like, no, that's the main event. That's really, really cool. And I think that I didn't even think that was a possibility for a woman when I first broke into the business. I just wanted to be the best that I could be and hopefully raise the bar to keep growing, for myself and for the industry, because I did realize that there was a lot of limitations on women's wrestling because you were looked at as a novelty match a lot of times, so.
Yeah, and it was tough on women, like Medusa was a great wrestler, a terrific wrestler, but she only had Bull Nakano and a couple others to wrestle.
Right.
Women back in the day, they travel around, but they wrestled each other, and that was it. You'd have a women's match on the card, but it was the same two women that would wrestle all over. Now you have this entire division, but you have the same thing in UFC. I mean, I think society has changed significantly since that time.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Because I think that they recognize that way they want to see more of that, and that there are a lot of badass women, and it's just all how we tell the stories. And I think that's another thing, is like, we're starting to tell the stories differently. It's not like, the Sunny and the Slop. And although I found the Sunny and the Slop bit really funny, but it's not stuff like that as much or whatever anymore. It's definitely real issues and real emotions that are going into the matches to kind of help build the drama, rather over some petty girly stuff as well. So I don't know. It's exciting to see, and I think that it's going to continue to rise, and you see it happening across all the promotions of like all these things that women are doing all the time now that they were never doing, from blood and hardcore matches and all these things. It's like, whoa, it's crazy. It's crazy times, and it's exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting, and it's really good too. John and I talked at the last WrestleMania. To me, the greatest match on the card was that young lady Bianca Belair. They stole the show to me, in my opinion. Did you in your dream, when you were beginning? Did you guys set? We deserve to be main event at WrestleMania. Did you guys visualize that at any time? And I know you wanted it, because you wouldn't been doing what you were doing if you didn't want to have a main event at WrestleMania.
Oh gosh,
But did you ever feel that way? Hey, we're above what they see us now.
Oh, 1000%. I felt like, I mean, I always felt like, women were capable of so much more than what we were given the opportunity for. But the reality was, like you said, there weren't a whole lot of women training. So even I would travel with my friend Bobby Joe, Persephone, all the shows in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee. We would drive together and do all the shows. She was like my wrestling partner friend, because she was one of the only females that wanted to travel and wanted to be a wrestler that we could do it together with. But now there's women everywhere, which is really, really cool. But I do think that you said, like, I'm a visionary in that sense of like, I do feel like you have to speak and see it into existence and touch it and all the things before you can actually. So I would obviously visualize myself. I wanted to be on WrestleMania and the WrestleMania card. I feel like every wrestler that's the pinnacle. The pinnacle of making it always in my eyes was being the women's champion. And I think to be the women's champion and to win it at WrestleMania, that was more than I ever anticipated or expected. And I'm still hella grateful for, but I visualize both of those things separately. And like, I want to be on WrestleMania one day. I want to highlight WrestleMania. And then I also visualize like being the women's champion, and the fact that happened there was really freaking cool. But I do feel like you have to see yourself at your goals in order to kind of help break through all crap that it's going to take to get there, you know? And I still do that. I feel like that's just, I don't know if that's just a part of my spirituality or whatever it is, but I'm big on that stuff. So, but yeah, I always wanted to be the best. And I wanted to be like the girls match to be like, hey, that was a hell of a match, not that was a hell of a girls match. You know, like those are the stigmas that I wanted to help break down of like, you know, because I always appreciated, I was like, oh, that was a hell of a match for girls. And I'm like, fuck, thanks. You know, like, damn it.
Yeah, and
so
that's a huge difference because that's how it used to be judged. Oh, that was a good match for girls.
Yeah.
And that was it, you know, and then, you know,
you're like, thank you, but also, damn it.
Right. You know, Finlay, we've had on, you know, he was such a big part of that whole women's movement. But, you know, now you look at a match between two women, it's judged on the meritocracy of the match.
Right.
Irrespective of gender. And now, you know, which is what you want. You know, now it's just normal. And it's like, that was either a good match or it wasn't a good match. It wasn't a good match because they were women or, you know, for any other reason.
Right. Right. Like different standards and stuff. So, which is amazing. And I know that, like, and I always say that and I go like, God, I hope whoever would have said that is not offended that I'm saying that, because I was grateful for the compliment, because I was like, well, it was better than what it meant to me was like, it was way better than what they anticipated it was going to be. And, it was a good match, but it was still not as good as the guys match. And I was, so in my competitive brain, I'm like, I want to be better. I want to be better than the guys. Like, I want to be the best. And I think you have to have that mentality.
It must feel great that nowadays when a match is compared, it's not compared with the guys. I mean, it's compared with a match on the card, you know, and that's what you want. That's what you worked your butt off to get there.
Right.
You know? And you guys did it.
Yeah. I know. It's exciting. The girls are killing it too. It's like, it's cool to see all the women stepping up, and everyone's so unique and different, and it's just exciting. And I think it really gives, other women and little girls in the audience or whatever, some like, aspirations, or like to know that it's really, it can happen for all of us, you know, and it kind of like raises the bar of like expectations of what they can do, you know.
It's really, really great. I've been honored and really pleased with this opportunity that I get to go over NXT, or I used to get to go over NXT all the time and see these tryouts. We'd have 40, a combination of men and women in there. We've had camp over there, Mickie, where the women just totally outshine the guys on any given drill. And, you know, you got to kind of jump on the guys, and you feel bad jumping on the guys, kind of belittling the girls, but you know, they're not stepping it up like the girls come in and they're ready to go. Right. They're in shape. You could tell they've been practicing. Where guys come in, you know, you're 3 months out, you know, you got a camp and you had been on a track or a treadmill at all. You come in and it showed. And when you go into the camp and you see how dedicated these young women that have come in for these tryouts are, and how far advanced. I mean, it's something that even as an old time male performer, it gives me great satisfaction to see these young ladies taking the business so serious and at this time of day and wanting to become a star and outworking their male counterparts. So, you know, to me, that's just the way that people, because of people like you presented that image there, that I got to work hard if I want to succeed. And now these girls have that in their mind, that they're not just coming down to be an attraction or eye candy. They're coming down to be they're coming down to be a main part of our roster there. And I think that goes back on your shoulders and all your workers they were during your time.
Oh, so many people. I think too, that's a matter of training. I think that there's a lot of it. I don't think people realize how much cardio is involved in those camps that they do down there, or like what it's going to entail. And I find that women train differently than men. Like we train more, well, at least I do anyway. Like I try to train like I'm going to train or be in the ring. So it's a lot of like getting my heart rate up and then letting it simmer down for a second and then getting my heart rate. And I feel like more women do that because we're going after different types of bodies than men are. And so men train heavy and they lift and they tend to slack a little bit more on the cardio And so we can keep our wind a little bit, because we're not, and men are trying to lift and carry more weight than a lot of the women are. We want to be toned and fit, but no, I don't want to be super jacked, but those blow up. I mean, I've seen some of the drills just when I was down there guest training or coaching, and some of the drills they were putting them through. And I'm like, oh God, if I had to get in here and do all these drills right now, I wonder how far I would get. But yeah, it's hard. It's definitely, and it's one thing I always say for them to go into those camps. I'm like, make sure your cardio's up. And we all know that treadmill cardio is not the same as in-ring cardio. Like, you need to be doing explosive drills and football drills and calisthenics and stuff like that to freaking pop your heart rate up and blow yourself up a lot.
When I was recruiting talent to go there, I would say, Mr. Brisco, what do I need to do? I give them 6 words in my response back: cardio, 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 promo, promo, promo. That's all I'd tell them. You get those things down and you're going to get a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that kills me, though.
Promo
I mean,
part.
I never understood why these guys try to kill people with cardio. You're famous, these old schools. I had it done to me too. You get in there, you do all the squats, you do all the stuff. That doesn't.
You don't do any of those.
I get it. They want guys that are in shape. They want to run off people that can't make it. But that to me doesn't have that much to do with the wrestling business.
Right. No. Yeah, not like the cardio. That's why I always say it's like more explosive stuff for me. Like, I'll do my squats and then I'll jump into like jump squats or something, just to kind of get my heart rate up and then to bring it back down. Because when you think about a pace of a match, it's a lot quick, and then breathe and then slow it down. And then, so that's kind of how I train my cardio.
Well, what was the most fearful thing for you when you got in that big ring all of a sudden? Here's this small little country girl from Virginia. All of a sudden, she's in this 18-foot ring. You're looking at those ropes about 4 foot tall. They're telling you, hit the ropes, hit the ropes, hit the ropes. What do I do? Well, I noticed a lot of guys, especially the beginners, that's their downfall, is trying to hit those ropes or turnbuckles there.
Yeah. Yeah, the ring was bigger. It was much bigger. But the most intimidation I had was I wasn't confident in myself. Like, I didn't feel like I belonged there. So you walk around with your shoulder. It wasn't until like I got the confidence, and that probably happened in OVW the most, of like, I felt like I wanted to be there so bad, but I didn't feel like I was good enough to be there or belong there. So I felt like it took a while to get my confidence up to where it matched being a WWE star on television, if that makes sense. Of like, I knew I was really great, like good in the ring. But I still felt like I'm just little Mickie James from Virginia, and I'm just grateful to be here, as we all are, So I think that I walked around a lot like, please like me, and please don't screw up, and don't say the wrong thing, and just like second guessing myself all day long, pretty much every time, even like in OVW, like even when I first came up on the road, I don't know that ever kind of left me, and except for this last turn, like my first run, I still felt like I was so. When I got switched over to SmackDown, especially, I was like, oh, feels so weird. I feel like the new girl in school all over again. This is weird. And I don't think anybody likes me over here. And oh God, this sucks.
But I think that's normal. I'd wrestled all over the world, and I wrestled a lot of places. And I came to WWE, and I was seeing Shawn Michaels at I think it was WrestleMania 12. I think it was Anaheim Pond against Brett in the Iron Man match. And he rappelled from the ceiling. And I remember sitting there watching it thinking, I don't belong here. I just, it's just, WWE is an overwhelming machine that a lot of people, when they come in, they never get over being overwhelmed by it.
Right. Well, I think it's overwhelmed by personalities, and you can see the confidence exude in someone like that. And you're going like, how do I get to that level of I belong here, but also where my in-ring matches my behind kind of confidence, because I felt like out there, I was full of confidence. I felt comfortable. I was over prepared, all the things, but behind the scenes, I was very like, oh, was that good enough? Do I belong here? I was constantly there. So it's hard because you're surrounded by the best, you really are. You're surrounded by people who also are probably even I think we're all our own worst critics. So even when I watch my matches now, I'm still like, oh God, why did I do that? Or whatever, like nothing's ever good enough. So I don't know. It's crazy.
But Buddy Landell was the one that smarted me up in Japan. I used to come back like everybody did, and I'd go to everybody in the back. You see my match? How was it? You see my match? How was it? And finally, Buddy pulled me aside. He said, come here, kid. He goes, you look terrible. He goes, you go into everybody, you're begging for approval. He goes, find you one or two people that you trust, go to them and don't say another word, but right. That's the one thing, that you see people do. They want so badly to be accepted. They come back and they'll ask everybody. Half the guys didn't see the match. They'll go, oh, it was great.
Yeah. Yeah. What part you like? Yeah. The part where you won.
Yeah. Exactly. How was it with you come in and you're with Trish? You're the obsessed stalker fan, one of the hottest stars of all time. How was that with Trish?
Oh, so fun. It was so fun. And when we were talking about Fit earlier, God, I'm so grateful for Fit because he helped make it so believable in where the in-ring story matched the story that was happening in the behind the scenes kind of thing. It was so that was like, I think the fourth or fifth time that I was supposed to debut. And so that one I didn't even text until I knew that I was actually debuting. I didn't even text my mom or dad that time. Cause I was like, I said, hey, watch Raw tonight. And then it never happened or whatever a couple times. So, I was waiting going like, oh shoot, this is really happening this time. And this is really going to happen. But I felt like there was a certain chemistry with Trish and I that I didn't know her at all, really, aside from the few whenever I was at OVW at the time and would come in when they were in like Columbus or Cincinnati, close enough, or Louisville area, and we would always come in. So I'd met her there, but never was super tight with her. So I felt like not only was she super welcoming and accepting and helpful, because she taught me a lot of things that even I felt like I was like, camera angles and how do you know which light to look for and all those things, while we kind of like created this story and we're given so much freedom and to be able to work with the writers. And I think that's what really helped make it magical, is the fact that we had our own input on these characters and how the story went, along with the writers, along with the Stephanie, along with whoever was kind of helping this journey along. And I think that as it started, I don't know that it was ever supposed to go as long as it did, but I think that the people they really loved it, and it just kind of opened up more and more and more. And it was really cool. And it was cool to see. I was immediately aligned with the top girl. So then it set me there. That was, I was immediately set at the top with the rest of the girls who were considered the best, which I think about the time I was supposed to debut before, and it was with CM Punk as his manager on Sunday Night Heat. And I go like, God, I wonder what the difference. You say again, wow. I prayed so hard and I was so devastated in that moment when Hunter came back and he's like, I like both you guys. I just don't see you together. It's just weird. And they filled that spot with some replays of something else, right? That happened on Raw or whatever with Rhino or something. But I was so devastated in that moment. But then I go like, God, how different would my career be James have been if that would have been my introduction to the WWE universe, was Sunday Night Heat, a manager for CM Punk? Like, would it have been great? Probably, yeah, but it wouldn't have been what Trish and I was, which was really special, and it was a game changer. And I think it really started to help flip the script to say like, okay, well, women can also be in just two females, a main storyline kind of driven thing, because that was really one of the first ones that I can recall that was just between and then the involvement of this character to show her up on TV and then turn her and single white female and all the elements. Poor Jack. Do you guys remember Jack? Trisha's boyfriend Jack, the crazy guy that I got rid of his ass.
Yeah. Mickie, you mentioned something. That was such a unique angle there. You were in as a star. How was that presented to you? Was you comfortable with it?
I loved it.
Did you have anything you could relate to and start into character?
Well, I didn't have to stretch too far to play a crazy woman. No. No, I mean, I wrote a lot of elements to that character of this crazy, single white female kind of super fan. I was originally wrote this idea, this character for Alita. I wrote it for Lita, and I'd asked Amy, Lita, if I could write this story, because I was like, I got this idea for this this character, and I felt like it really resonated with fandom as a whole, and with I was a fan of wrestling, I was a fan of all the things, but you see in my interactions of like coming to tryouts and come and hang out backstage, I would see when you would pull up the fans like along the thing and just like screaming people's names, the stars on the thing, and they're screaming and they're crying, can I get your autograph? Okay, so that's like fandom. I'd never been one of those people, that hardcore of a fan, because quite frankly, we couldn't afford to go to the live shows, right? So but I just go like, God, imagine like the type of fanship, and then you watch shows of like this thing, and I go like, so it kind of inspired me of like, what if it was a wrestling character who was a super fan, who finally got this, it was a super fan of this one person, and finally got this opportunity to be, and all they wanted to be was a WWE. Like it was the dream and all the things, but turned up to 11, of like, what would that feel like? And what would that do? And then they kind of, I remember I wrote it, and then Michael Hayes, said, hey, we read your story idea in the meeting the other day. He goes, I was like, oh, really? I was like, well, what'd you think? He goes, well, I thought it was pretty good. He goes, but Vince loved it. And I was like, oh, really? He goes, yeah, well, I think this is me also thinking that Michael is ribbing me, because I talked to Michael several times before that. So he's like, I think you should go in there and walk in Vince's office, and I think you should tell him that you wrote that story and that you know that character and that's your character, and nobody's going to be able to do it like you. And I was like, okay. He goes, all right. And then he walks off, and I'm like, this is probably about 4 p.m. in the day. So, and he came to me 2 or 3 times during the day going like, did you talk to Vince yet? And I'm like, no, I'm just an OVW little Lexus. I'm like, no, what? No, I have not talked to Vince yet, but I did. I waited outside. He goes, because he said, you need to just wait outside his office after the show. I said, okay. And I did. And I was sweating and so nervous, but I did. And I did exactly what he said. And I was like, I walked in, I was like, he was coming back to his office, and it was.
And you're still in OVW at this time, right?
I was.
Thinking that took so much for you to have the nerve to do that.
Yeah, I tell you what took even more was trusting Michael Hayes.
Felt like it was going to be. Honestly, the amount of time I was sitting outside of his office, just waiting there, I felt like there were cameras on me. Like this is a rib, just so that it's going to be replayed forever of like what's happening right now. And I just felt like it was an eternity that I was waiting for him. And he came back, and I was like, sir, can I have a moment of your time? And he said, absolutely. And I went in, and I said what Michael told me to say. I was like, I heard you read my storyline. I heard you really liked it, and the whole thing. I just want you to know that I wrote that character inside and out. Nobody knows that character like me. Nobody's going to play that character like me. And if, you need your next star, I got you, or whatever. And he just looked at me. He's like, you got balls, kid. And I go, thanks. Thank you. And I scampered out of his office, and I was like, oh my God. Right. And then I sat in OVW for another 6 months going, oh shit, what did I do? What did I do? And then they brought me in, and it was the same character, same story, but for Trish. And then it was off to the races. And
did you get any feedback after the meeting? So like you sat down there in OVW for 6 months. Did you have any feedback, or you thought, oh my goodness, I screwed up?
What did I do? Michael got me. Oh no, Vince hates me. He's like, I don't know. No, I didn't know what I was petrified. I was like, oh my God, what did I do? I'm on the axe.
Well, if somebody knows crazy, it's Michael Hayes.
Yeah.
Right. And crazy is what crazy does. And if somebody knows crazy, it might be Mickie James. I don't know.
Scott Steiner did a promo one time. It was so good. I love Scotty's promos, by the way, all of them. So I love Scotty. But he was doing something about he just returned from a time off. And he goes, I didn't come back to win a title in Poughkeepsie. I came back to win a main event. It went on with the whole promo. Winning a title anywhere is awesome, but you got to win it at WrestleMania. You know, and WrestleMania moments are the moments that, you know, live forever. You know, it's like, I don't know, that's the grand stage. It really is the grand stage. And you got to have WrestleMania moments for your career. How was that when you found out you're winning the title at WrestleMania?
It was overwhelming. I honestly, it was so overwhelming. It was, I always say if I could bottle up my emotions, and I felt like you could feel them and you could see my whole heart in a lot of some of those moments in the match, because I was just lost in some of those points of like, oh my God, this is incredible. And I think that was really the final, that was probably the moment where I go like, I really did it. I really made it. Like,
how many years have you been in the business at this time, Mickie?
Well, I mean, I say I don't really count the first year because it was learning or whatever, but you know, 99, 2000 is when I really started making the name for myself and stuff. So at that point it was 2000, April 2006. Yeah, but
wow,
so it was like
quick,
a journey.
Yeah.
It was a journey, and it was, for some people go like, oh, it wasn't that, but it was a lot that had happened in that 6 year or 7 year time span that to get to that moment. And oh man, I can't even explain, like, because it was joy and it was excitement and it was like looking back on what it took to get there and now being there, and it was like, it was magic. It was so magical. And I go like, I wish I could bottle up that and just give it to people sometimes.
And not only did you make it, but it was your storyline that got you to that point there, which is remarkable.
Well, it was definitely the, you know, the culmination of that character. And then I mean, obviously I say that was the storyline. You know, I wrote whatever 18 weeks of TV, and maybe 4 of those ideas made it to TV. But the working with the writers and because with Trish, it just made it so different, and getting to know her and learn with her, and our personalities just, it wouldn't have worked with a character or a personality that didn't mesh so well. And we genuinely created like this cool bond, and we're still friends to this day because we just have like this unique, organic, I think, banter back and forth, which just worked on screen. And it just, it was different and it was fun, you know, it was so fun. And I think that was the best part of it, is because it was a fun storyline. So you could kind of play with it and have all these different elements.
You know, it's funny because you go to, like, say, a Comic-Con or a signing or something, you know, you see some stars that were, you know, huge stars from a certain TV show or something. Doesn't matter how long ago it was. If it was a huge star with huge ratings, you know, the Attitude Era was so hot. You know, most of us guys will always be remembered for that Attitude Era because that's where everybody watched. But you guys were the pioneers of the women's movement. And so you will probably always be remembered most for that time that you were with Trish, that you were with Lita, that you were the first group that was bringing in this women's movement. That's got to be pretty cool that after all these years, people still remember you as one of those pioneers, and you're the one that started this movement, and you were the ones that laid the foundation for the women today.
Well, I'm certainly honored to be aligned with those ladies, you know, because to me, those were the women when I was trying to break in that were doing it, that were kicking down the doors for me, or like the Mollys or the Jacquelines, or when I go back of, you know, Sensational Sherry, and freaking all the way back to just like how much women's wrestling's evolved, you know. But I felt like super honored to be even put in their basket with them, you know, because I felt like they did so much work prior to me even getting there. And then like, it was really Trish working that angle with me, and that angle that kind of set the pace of Mickie James. But then Amy, I had her retirement match and at the Survivor Series before she retired and left. And so it's like, that was really the end of that golden era of like what I called of with the Molly Holly and Jacqueline and Ivory, and that whole kind of group of the girls that I was watching. I remember when Ivory came down to OVW, and it was awesome because I felt like I could learn from somebody who was on television where I wanted to be, and in that space of like changing the game for us then. So I don't know. And then it's just weird, and it's crazy to see the progression of like, even of like the dips and the curves since then. But it's funny that that I've done a lot since then, and that's still the thing that most people talk about, you know, like you said, because that just era of wrestling was so hot, and I think it just inspired this whole generation of wrestlers now that, you know, are all trying to be that level. And it's like getting the business back to that level of hotness. That's the real question.
That's right. But you know what? It's like people always bring up, Cena's 20th anniversary. He won his first title for me at WrestleMania. And people bring up all the time, so did you know about John? Guys, I had the rest of a career. I actually did a few other things. I did after that. Which I don't, and I say that joking because I don't mind at all. I think it's wonderful that people bring it up, and I was there for Cena to win the first title. But I know how you feel with it. When people bring up a certain point, thank goodness it's a good point. It's not a bad point. It's like something like, hey,
1,000%.
Yeah.
Are you always be a stooge too? I remember you when.
That's right. Somebody was talking about Jerry one day, and he goes, "Yeah, he was the stooge guy." And I go, he was actually like this really good amateur wrestler and really good professional wrestler. And yeah,
so funny.
And same with Finlay. Finlay was a great wrestler. I mean, awesome,
incredible.
And something to remember for him is being the trainer for the women's division, which is also awesome. But he had this 30-year career before that was pretty freaking good.
Pretty freaking amazing. And you think about Fit was handed the girls kind of as a rib. Like,
right
here, you take the ladies.
I was the one that had to pass that along to him. Can you imagine that meeting, Fit? We got a new assignment for you. Yeah, what is it? Well, we'd like you to take over the web division. They've just been looked at as not a competitor here in the past, and we want to change that perception of them. And Vince thinks you're the guy that can change that perception of them. That's basically how it went down. And Vince wasn't really wild on it in the beginning, but man, when he bought into it, there was not a better coach in our industry than Finlay.
No doubt. I say that 1,000%. And he would treat us like the boys. And I think that's what I appreciated the most, is that he would fight us like the boys. And he would expect it out of us. And and if we didn't understand it, he'd show it to us. And he'd physically show it to us and say, this is how it goes. This is how it feels. So you knew. And I'm just like, he never like daintied around with us or treated us like just, they need special treatment because they're the girls. He was more of, I want to get you to the level of you're taken seriously. I want to get you guys. And I felt like it was a for him too, of like, I want to get these girls. I got given the girls, and so I'm going to show them what these girls can do. And
and not only that, he took care of you guys politically backstage too. The guy was on your side 100% in and out of the ring, and I always felt really bad because I was kind of the controller at the time, the Scrooge with the time, and every time it never felt, the segment before the ladies match would go long. But I got to hand it to the ladies, John. Every time girls, you lost 2 minutes. They wouldn't argue with me the way the guys do. They'd say, yes, sir. But they immediately knew how to take out that spot where they could make. And the girls were the best in the world, John, of hitting their time and nailing their time. Even though they got jerked out of their time a lot of matches. Just about every match, But
pretty much every match. But I felt like we always prepared. We had our obviously you go like, okay, what would we lose if we lose a minute? What will we lose if we lose 2 minutes? Because it happens so often, but at that point we were just grateful to get the opportunity to go out there. Cause you always say, maximize your minutes and make the most of each moment, right? Like that. If you have a 30-second promo, it better be golden, 30 seconds of gold, right? The same if you got a 4-minute match. And for the most part, we tried to always deliver and still tried to hit our times, even if frustrated that we lost our time. We're like,
and I got to pat myself on the shoulder. Every time I got a couple of spare minutes and I saw Mickie's name on the card, I knew where that 2 spare minutes were going. I always
love you. I love you. Yeah.
That's not an easy thing to do. It is if you've been around the business a long time. You say take out a couple minutes of an 8-minute match. That's a quarter of the match.
That's
If you're young in the business and you don't really know what you're doing, a lot of times you planned out 8 minutes and you have a real hard time taking out a quarter of the match because you have no idea about time. So that says a lot. it says a lot about you guys that you could take out 2 minutes and still hit your time cue, because that's not that easy. That's something that comes with experience and a lot of time in the ring.
Yeah.
Well, John, I got to tell you about the girls. If they were ever told they had 8 minutes, they'd been overjoyed. I would have gotten every hug and they're in a room there, but they were always handed 6 minutes. Then they would lose 2 minutes.
Yeah. With entrances. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you guys made it work though. That was a great thing.
We
made
did.
It work.
Yeah. You have to make
Mickie, when did you decide? Because you said earlier that I think you have a wonderful voice, and I love your albums.
Thank you.
I think they're fantastic.
Thank you.
When did you decide that you were going to start putting stuff like that out again? That was seems to be like your real passion, or one of your real passions.
It is it's an outlet, because these are just thoughts and feelings that I put down on paper, because wrestling, you have to be so tough all the time, right? Like you had to have it's become more acceptable to be a little bit more sensitive and to be more open with that now. But I always felt like I kept a lot of how I was feeling on the other side, just kind of or I would keep them in my journals, notebooks and stuff. I've always been a bit of but I think that once I finally made it in WWE and then I was up there and it was something just like a triggering of, I'm not doing music anymore and I have less time for my horses. And it was a dream. It was something that I thought that I wasn't good enough at. And I go like, well, I achieved this dream of wrestling that nobody thought I was going to make or do. And I don't understand why I'm still letting, I think it was one of those things. It was a mental thing for me, because I go like, I don't know why I'm still allowing this thought of like, I'm not good enough for my music. I was like, even if it's just what I wrote, I just need to do it just for me, just to say that I did it, because I feel like it's something that's blocked me creatively or just like on a soul level. So that's what made me do it. Like I was on the road. I think it was like 2000. I put the first album out in 2010. So I was on the road for I was doing school. I was going to college when I first debuted. So the first about year and a half of myself on the road, I was still attending classes online and doing all the thing to get my business degree. And so once I graduated, I'm like, okay, well now what am I going to do? Because I'm still wrestling. I'm on the road. I also traveled by myself a lot. For the most part, I always traveled by myself. So I'd do a lot, and I was a night driver. So I'd do a lot of thinking in my car after the matches and driving to the next town. I was just started writing and writing and writing more. And I found myself writing in melodies and writing in the thing. And it just kind of kept, and I would sing in my car and all the things. And I was like, I don't know. It was just one random day on the road, probably, in Nebraska or whatever, where I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go take these songs. Like I've been working with some other songwriters back home. Like in the meantime, I was like, I'm just going to go take these songs to Nashville and just cut them just to say that I did it. Because the only reason why I never did it is because I thought someone else told me I wasn't good enough. But I'm just going to do it for me. And that's what started it. And then I met my first producer, Wells. He's Dolly Parton's guitar player. And I had met a bunch of producers in town, but he was the first one who goes like, you know what? You have a really unique sound and a unique voice, and your songs, creatively, like I'm still green in a songwriters, or at least people that do that for a living, like just write songs, right, for other people. And he was like, we'll get you with some songwriters to get your songwriting up, like to keep growing on that. He goes, but I think we could put a couple of your songs on this album, but I think you should do a full album and not just these. I think I had like 4 or 5 songs that I'd written that I thought were good enough. He's like, I think we should use like 3 or 4 of these and then get some other ones, but I think that we should do a full album. And it was like him that really helped guide me through that first album. And then so much came out of it. And then I got my confidence up. I kept writing. I got signed with E1 Music Nashville, and Van Fletcher from there hooked me up with a bunch of different songwriters as well. And my first producer, Jamie Lee Thurston, on that album kind of helped me because he's a songwriter too. It's just constant growing. It's the same. I use the same almost formula as I did in wrestling of like just constantly learning from either my producers, like R.S. Field for that producer. He was incredible. And just like his ear on music and what was good and what wasn't good. And then now I work with my friend Sean Gassaway with my Firewater Records, which is just like stuff that I've been putting my personal stuff out on now. and I just got a distribution deal for it. So to be able to get it out on all the platforms and to get it up on Vivo for my music videos. So it's more of like a legit distribution platform and not just like a CD baby, which is a lot of independent artists use. So yeah, it's just been, and just keep writing and writing and writing. And I think I've changed my goal in music of like, I just really want to out good music that I love and write stories that I love. And if whether I'm singing the song or somebody else was to sing the song, it's flattering, if somebody else wants to sing your song or if it resonates, because it's storytelling to me. And that's what I really love is between wrestling and music and writing is just the storytelling, aspect of it. So
how was the performing singing? You were out with a lot of other great groups, great musical stars. How was it performing night after night music, say compared to wrestling?
Oh, it's a different type of exhaustion, isn't it? Like, because your voice, it's all on your voice. And what would be really difficult was when I would do a wrestling show and then I would follow it up with later that night, I would go do a musical performance because now I've screamed in the match and yelled in the match. So my voice is all like struggling, and then gone and performed an hour set at the bar at midnight, from midnight to 1. And those were so much fun. They were like, like after parties and stuff. They were a lot of fun and the fans loved them. But at the same time, I was like, those were really hard. It's a lot of pressure too, because I mean, I've opened up for like Montgomery Gentry and Gretchen Wilson. I was so nervous because I loved both those groups and I loved Gretchen. Like I was like, she's so freaking cool. And to have to open for them and like know that they're listening, and it could have been the same as like, at the wrestling behind the stage. Hey, did you watch my set? And they didn't see but one
Right.
song of it, right?
Oh, you were great. You were great.
Yeah, you were great. It was wonderful. No, you had no clue, right? No, but it was cool. I did a thing with Little Big Town. I opened for Chris Stapleton at the Kentucky Chicken Festival. Way back before he blew up, and it was like they were just starting to promote that album, but it was right before he blew up from that. And I just remember watching for me, and I'm going like, this guy is incredible. Like he's so much better than me. Like he's so good. And a couple months later, here he is. He's
good,
winning all kinds of awards. Yeah, he's incredible. What a lot of people didn't know is that he was also in the Steel Drivers, which was like not like a little band, but if you go download, it's like more like bluegrassy kind of stuff, but they would play downtown Nashville a lot too. And he was writing songs for other people and all those things before he blew up as a separate artist away from them. And I was like, oh, but you find these people and then you become a fan of them personally, but you also go back and listen to like different stuff. And I didn't know anything really about that until, I watched him that day and I was like, dude, he's so good.
Yeah, and he's got a unique sound. It's a kind of unique, like Willie is unique. It's a unique. It's not a typical voice and not a typical song set.
No, I feel you hear his whole soul. I think when he's singing, you can hear it all.
So you really
he's like, what the hell?
so you really enjoy writing, right?
Writing, yeah.
And so is that something that you want to do more of, say, outside of the music business? I mean, you've obviously written wrestling storylines. You were an executive producer of NWA. I mean, is that a progression of your career that you want to go to? I mean, sometimes just because you're doing something doesn't mean you want to do it. Don't want to do it for a job, not just be an outlet for you. But is it something you want to do more of?
Yeah, I have been actually. I took a novel class in high school, a creative writing class, and I've always been English and literature and stuff was always, I aced. I was so good. It was math that I struggled in. I don't know why I got my degree in business because I actually hate math, but I love arts. I took a lot of arts and it's just been all those, I'm just an artsy fartsy kind of gal, John. So I just really like appreciate that, like good literature and good music. And like, to me, like writing is like a song, because it kind of like sings, it just kind of sings you along the thing for me. And songs like they kind of coincide a lot. I like writing. I don't know that's going to go. I've obviously been working on like projects from show pitches or more songs and all the things, but that's just Some of my writing is very personal. It's just for me. And then some writing is more for ideas and stuff like that. So I'll keep writing because it's a way to get all these thoughts out of my head.
You mentioned traveling alone. I saw you in Liverpool when you lost your whole family. It was a tragic event.
Oh my God. I can't unlive it. So Brisco, did he tell you the story of what happened? Did you know?
Not. He told me his side of the story, Mickie. I want to hear the truth. I want to hear the truth, not the Texas side.
It probably is the truth what he told you, because I've never been more ashamed, and I just didn't know what to think. We get to, mind you, we've had this trip booked, and it's going to be great, and we haven't to see Nick's family in England at that point since. For like 3 years. We finally went back, by the way. We went for a whole week and we only visited, no work, just visited. So we get to, and we had been pumping this whole thing up. Donovan had told his school about it, how great it was going to be. Like, oh, it's the first time we're going to England in almost 3 years. It's going to be a big trip. We're going to visit the family. We're going to do all the things. We get to the airport and Nick kind of looks at Donovan's passport and he goes, oh shit, it's expired. And I'm like,
no,
shut up. You're lying. So she asks for the passport. I hand it to him. We hand it. And she's like, well, do you have a valid passport? And I go, what do you mean? No, that's his passport. That's it. Children's passports expire every 5 years. If you're wondering, they don't go 10 years like adult passports. They only go 5 years. So she says to me, yeah, this one expired 2 years ago.
Wow.
2 years ago. Because we've traveled since he was an infant, so he still had his infant picture on his. Now, as soon as she goes, well, children's passports only last every 5. It triggered immediately. I go like, oh my God, I remember them saying that when we first got his passport, but I just hadn't thought about it. So yeah, his passport was expired and his face went from, I'm like, we had to make that decision of like, okay, who's going to go, who's going to stay. And it was the first time Trish and I were signing together. I would have originally just sent Nick and I would have stayed home, but I kind of had to go to the convention. So I went and I left Nick and Donovan at home, and I cannot still to this day unsee Donovan's face when I.
Oh, that's just terrible. I felt so sorry for you, Jerry. Jerry, I saw her at the airport, and I felt so bad for her. She goes, "I just lost my whole family." I go, and she told me the story. I said, "Oh my God, that is it's terrible."
Oh, but he has not stopped ribbing me on it. Going,
no, of course
your
not.
Family?
Once I realized it was okay, then I told everybody.
Fine.
I told everybody. Mickie lost her whole family. It's tragic.
Yeah.
Everybody knew I lost my whole family coming over. But we had a good time. We had to make the best of the situation. We all still had a great time. It was a great time.
It was a good time. It was a good time. It was a fun time. I had, it's the first international trip I'd taken during COVID. So it was nice to go somewhere. And
I got your first millionaire shortbread.
You did. Yes.
Yes.
It was excellent. It was excellent. Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I should have bought something for you. You're the one that lost your family. I feel terrible.
I know. It's okay. It's all right. Next time.
But you gave him a story that he's told worldwide. Don't make you about me.
He loves it.
That's right.
Who loses their family? How'd you lose your family?
I was on the way back. We had to take.
There's nothing more helpless. There's nothing more helpless when you get to those customs agents and they shake their head no, and you have no right. You can't say nothing.
You're stuck.
Yeah.
You're absolutely stuck. And I was just like, oh my God. So yeah, we ended up having to expedite
then everything comes flashing back to you. I remember that lady telling me 5 years.
Immediately, I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it.
On the way back, Jerry, we had to take a COVID test, to get back in the States.
Right.
And so they hand us this self-administered COVID test. And I said, so what happens if I fail now? And he goes, well, you're quarantined for 14 days.
Yeah.
And so he left and came back, and I'm still holding it. And he goes, you taking it? I said, yes, sir. I'm not taking a risk of getting stuck.
You're like, no, sir.
Yeah.
I felt like they watched me do mine. Hey,
Mickey, we really appreciate you coming on and taking this time with these two old boys here, and we really enjoyed it. We've been wanting to have you on for quite some time now, and the schedule's just worked out for us. So thank you so much. Where can our fans find you, and what's going on with Mickie James out you want to talk about?
Oh, so many things. I have Gaw TV on Wednesdays. I have Busted Open on Wednesday mornings. You can just go to mickiejames.com. It has all my stuff there.
Okay, there you go.
Super easy.
How do you like working with that Bubba Dudley fella?
Well, I do Wednesdays with just David, and I've done a couple things with where Bubba's called in, but I do with David and Tommy on Wednesday.
Oh, I got you. I didn't.
Yeah.
You know, they switch.
Yeah. So sometimes they switch around depending on availability or something, you know. So I love Bubba. Bubba's interviewed.
Oh, he's awesome. I love Bubba too. Always have.
Yeah. He's an acquired by some people, but I appreciate it.
Sort of like.
No, I thank you. I hope my t-shirt's in the mail though. I don't have one of those B squared WO.
There you go.
Mr. Brisco, the center one.
John's the finance guy on this.
Oh, he's the finance.
So
well, he's in the he's in Bermuda right now, so it may take a while to ship it from there.
Your check for the appearance will be arriving soon, along with your shirt there.
Right.
Well, we'll get you one, Mickey.
Oh, well, they just got, what'd you say? You just got Rocky too. So I feel like I'll be waiting a while, but that's all right.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the internet probably has been cutting in and out. So we're a little behind times here. Yeah. Like about 1950 in Bermuda right now.
I can't wait to come.
Mickey, thank you. Hey, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you guys.
I've always
appreciate it.
Been a big fan of yours, a friend of yours, and so proud of you for all your success. And well, when you were doing the pay-per-view, I sent you a note. I was thrilled for you. I think you're a terrific person, and thank you for coming on the show with two old guys.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.